There it is.
Hello.
What's up, fellas?
What's going on, man?
What's up?
Good
Another
to see you all
week.
again. Already got Chris Disk in the house,
Good to
shouting
see
out.
everyone.
Chris,
What's up, man?
Dis.
Said the link didn't go live until I reloaded your channel. Huh? Interesting. Technology, man. Technology. What do you do? The good news is that we're typically always live at 7 somehow. You know, Tuesday nights, 7 p.m.
Somewhere.
Eastern Standard Time. So what's going on, fellas?
Same stuff, man.
Yeah.
Spring
Don't all respond at once.
training. I didn't know I was gonna let somebody else go first, but spring training.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Scherzer looking good on the mound for the Mets yesterday. DeGrom struck out 5 of 6 today.
DeGrom.
Let's go.
Yeah,
That's
man.
all I'm worried about.
And this is what, the Mets? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just busting your chops, man.
DeGrom's got the good flow.
Yeah, right. It's gone.
He cut it off?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a couple years ago. Yeah.
I mean, I don't
He
want to
used to
get
have
too
this stuff.
excited, but I'm over here looking at a 6-0 record so far in spring training. Like, what's going on?
Hey man, gotta get excited about baseball regardless.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is typically in the world of us Red Sox fans, if we get too excited too soon, we always get let down. So it feels important not to get too excited too soon.
Is it preseason?
Yeah, spring training. Yeah, or preseason. I mean, you can call it that.
Whatever
I
it
don't
is,
think
yeah.
anybody will get mad at you for that.
When does the actual season start?
Like I think I can't remember the exact date, but I feel like it's April 8th. For some reason that
Okay.
day stands
Yeah,
out to
hang
me.
on, I'll tell you. It's
They
yeah,
pushed
I
it
think
back.
you're right. I think it's the 7th, the weekend of the 7th and 8th. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, they pushed it back because of the delays with the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
And then, but they're still going to get all 162 games in, which is good for me because MLB.TV subscription lets me watch all the Mets games.
That's right.
That's what's up.
They're doing
That's
a
what's
lot of
up.
double headers this year too to get all those games in.
Yeah, I know, man. That's kind of crazy, but hopefully teams that wanted to invest in starting pitching, that'll kind of pan out for some of us.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
see.
this is what I love about our show. It's like come to a wedding business growth podcast and hear all about sports. This is kind of becoming a theme of our lives. But I mean, that's okay, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think it's funny that we have gravitated towards doing that almost every show. But that's okay.
Well, you know what? I mean, we're authentically us.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And I mean, that's what you're going to get. We get a little bit of sports talk, especially with baseball. We all are giddy baseball fans.
Yep.
So here it is.
I'll
right?
tell you, speaking of being authentically us, I just came off a 5 event in a row binge, and it was something else. My body is definitely screaming at me for it. But I think mentally more so than anything else, it's just becomes very challenging to, number one, just kind of keep it all together when you're. This is why when I get all my paperwork ready for my events, and I do this whether I have 2 events, 1 event, 10 events, whatever. I get it all ready. I go through it. I make sure I have the music I need, and then I don't touch it again until the day of the event, because otherwise there's a really good chance I'm going to end up mixing up a name, or I thought they wanted me to do this here, do that there. But it was an interesting time, but I had a lot of fun, and I posted a video from last night. It was a good
flag surfing.
It was a good way to end it, man. It was a good way to end it. Not that the other events weren't anywhere close to as exciting as that, but it was just nice. It was a nice way to end it. Those guys had a lot of fun, and they were a really cool group.
Well, and you know what? Like, I don't know about you, David, but just speaking from the DJ world, right? There are definitely at times going to be like groups of people and crowds that just respond differently to the music portion of the night, and it just kind of is what it is. Just like, and it works the same for photographers, right? I see those grooms that don't really want their pictures taken, and they just are done with it after 20 minutes, but you have another 40 to go, know, and so, and it's the same thing with music, man. Like, people think DJs can just make everybody dance. We can make everybody that wants to dance.
Oh, I love that.
If you don't want to dance, though, I can't do anything about that.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that. I love when people say, when I ask them, what's the vibe, what's the feel, what are you looking for, and they say, oh, I just want everybody to dance. And I say to them, typically I'll say to them, well, respectfully, are you inviting a bunch of people that normally typically go out and dance? Do they go to the clubs, or they go out and dance on the weekends or something like that? And that might sound like a weird question, but the reality is, if you're inviting a bunch of people that are not dancers, there's no DJ. I don't care what any DJ tries to tell you. There's not any DJ that is, unless they're also a hypnotist. So maybe they can hypnotize all of your guests and then make them dance. But otherwise, the reality is that there's always going to be a segment of that of the group of people that are really more of just the people watchers. And there's nothing wrong with those. Like, there's a lot of people that have such fun just people watching. You know what I mean? And we should allow them to do that and not make them feel awkward about, being a part of the event. Yeah.
Or seat dancers, right? They just want to bob their head in their seat, and they're not ever going to hit the dance floor no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And couples always ask, they're like, what are those couple of tricks? What can you do to get people out there? Well, like, if your crowd doesn't want to dance, even if I play one of those line dances or a slow dance song that everybody will typically come out to, they're going to leave right away after that. So it's like, it's tough, but people don't see that. They just want to see full dance floors. But man, I tell you what, like I said, the video you posted, man, I love Swag Surfing. Like, that song just holds a special spot in my heart, because my homie did a mix in the middle of a VCU campus where he was like, and VCU's a very popular college in Richmond, and he played Surfing USA and cut it into Swag Surfing.
Oh, wow.
He's a dorky little white guy playing Surfing USA in the middle of a DJ battle. Like, they were mocking him when he was doing that, but he already knew he had him. Like, he was just waiting to drop it. And so, like, that song just always stands out to me because of that moment that So, man, when I saw that, I was like, man, that's awesome. That's such a good song.
Cool. I wonder if there's a video of that somewhere. I'd love to see that, man.
It actually went viral. It still gets retweeted to this day. It has I think 12 or 15 million views on it. And that's what got him in touch with actually that's what built his friendship with Shaq. He produces music with Shaq occasionally from that video.
How crazy is that? You go from being a dorky little white dude that's getting like DJ shamed to producing music with Shaq.
Yeah.
Proof that anything can happen in this world, man. Anything can
that's
happen in
the
this
truth.
world.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
Well, if you see that link, send it to me, man. I'd love to see that mix.
Yeah, I will, man. I need to share yours because, like I said, like that song it's such a cool moment. And man, if people like that song, like that's the reaction you get every time. What happened at that wedding? So it's like par for the course. So
It's a great song. Yeah.
No, it was great. I mean, I was kind of as the saying goes, I was kind of shooting fish in a barrel last night. I mean, luckily it was really, I was just very fortunate because I knew exactly what the couple wanted, the guests wanted. It all flowed perfectly. So
It's nice to way to finish off a run like that.
yeah, it was good. What about you, Nick? What have you been up to, man? You got some events on your belt this last weekend?
Yeah, I had some weddings this weekend. Chill events. Good folks.
Yeah.
Just keeping up, man. Just trying to keep up.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get cranking here. We got a lot to talk about, and we want to keep it within the time frame here. As always, remind everybody, if you haven't done so yet, join the text club right above us there, scrolling, so that we can, we can notify you of shows when we go live, or if anything changes to what we have going on, programming or anything at all like that. We will shoot you a text and let you know that something's changed. Otherwise, we'll let you know the show's gone live, so you can jump on and join us. And speaking of that, those of you that are in the audience, please feel free to use the comments to let us know you're there. If you have questions, if you have shout outs, if you want to make fun of any one of the three of us for any reason, feel free to do it. We take that pretty well usually, and we'll have fun with that. There's a good old Matt Peterson. What's up, man? Good to see you, Matt.
What's up, Matt?
Thanks for joining us. All right, so let's dive into getting our guest on board, huh?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. So let me read this bio, and then we'll get going. So our guest tonight, you probably saw, it's Mr. Braden Drake. Braden is a California licensed attorney and tax professional. His tagline is "Your gay best friend, here to help you get your legal, tax, and financial shit legit." I love that tagline. Absolutely,
I love that.
right?
dude, authentically you.
Right? Being authentically you is completely right. Braden works primarily with service-based creative small business owners through his signature program, Profit RX. I love this. So we're in for a treat tonight, and if you would all please help me welcome Mr. Braden Drake to the show. Braden, how are you, man?
Thanks for being on.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Had to use the old
That's sound effects. All right.
there.
It's a new thing. He's playing.
Rocking the old sound effects. There we go. Let me get this all set up properly.
Nice.
So, Braden, thank you for joining us again, man. We really appreciate you jumping on with us tonight. Right off the bat, I've saved this until we came on live, and I hope it's okay for me to say this. But a little birdie told me that your husband recently got appointed to the Supreme Court, right? Is it San Jose? Am I right?
No, so well, not the Supreme Court, the Superior Court of San Diego County.
Okay. Superior Court.
He is, yes, yeah. Supreme Court's like the head deal, right?
Got it.
So Superior Court in San Diego. My mom's actually here visiting. His parents are visiting, and we had a whole celebration last night, which was a real good time.
Well,
Awesome.
I figured I was going to botch it up, but congratulations to him on that.
Yes.
That's got to be exciting and amazing for you guys.
Super cool.
Dude, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I had no
very,
idea.
very exciting. A big milestone for him.
Cool.
Super cool. All right, well, you guys, let's just dive right into this.
Let's
Nick,
dive in.
you want to kick us off, man?
Yeah. So I could, from a DJ perspective, from video perspective, and what we do in the wedding industry, I think it's safe to say that most of us start out doing this as a hobby. Like, we started DJing as a hobby. We start doing video as a hobby. Myself, personally, I love doing video. I've been doing video since I was a kid and in high school, and it was just a hobby. However, moving in from a hobby into the professional world, sometimes it gets difficult to, decipher, what am I? You know, is this a hobby? Is this am I a freelancer? Is this a business? So the title that you give yourself is super, super important. You know, I used to think I was a freelancer. Now that I have some people that do weddings with me, is this more of a business? I don't know. So what you call yourself is really important, right? Maybe we can dive into a little bit of why it's so important, as to making sure you say, oh, am I a freelancer? You know, oh, it's just a hobby. Like, why? Maybe we could just dive right into that.
Yeah, so we have kind of this first and foremost issue of like what we call ourselves matters, because that gets into the mindset we have as entrepreneurs, business owners, freelancers, whatever we want to call ourselves. I don't really get into that. Like, I'm not a mindset expert. I'm not a coach, so I leave that up to some other folks. But when it comes to the way we actually run our business, it makes a huge difference, right? Because with the IRS, to them, this isn't like a subjective mindset question. It's like a, do you owe us business, like business taxes, or do you not? From a legal perspective, it's, you know, can someone sue your business, or are they going to sue you? That's where like these kind of nuances really make a difference. And for the most part, I just like to encourage people to consider themselves business owners as soon as they have an objective to actually make money. Because it's one thing, you know, to buy yourself a camera and start playing around, but once you decide that you're actually, if someone's going to pay you to go do some work, you need to start paying your taxes.
Yeah, and if not, you're going to find yourself in trouble really quick in that regard too. You know, I think that our industry used to be an industry that maybe the government didn't pay as much attention to, but I think over time that seems to have evolved quite a bit.
Most definitely. And one thing I would like to add to that.
Right, and ultimately, like,
oh, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe you can even like elaborate on this a little bit. I don't know if you all saw, but you know, Vimeo, I think it's, or Venmo, is like they're cracking down, you know, on those payments over $600. To David's point about, like, you know, this is becoming, you know, maybe it wasn't super mainstream, you know, 10, 15 years ago, but now I think as more people enter the freelance space or enter that freelancing type of thing, I think that like the IRS and everyone are cracking down on that, you know, in terms of like receiving payments and stuff like that. So maybe you could just elaborate on that too.
Sure. So with the new Venmo rules, this all has to do with 1099K reporting, right? So a lot of people are familiar with the normal 1099. So if you hire a contractor, you pay them $600 or more, you send them a 1099. If you have a payment processor, so for example, I get paid through Stripe, I get a 1099K from them. So it's a similar kind of process, and other payment processors are subject to this as well. But unlike the other 1099 rules, for 1099Ks, the threshold has always been $20,000. And so they've decided to drop that down to the 600, just like our other 1099s, in hopes that this will prevent people from not reporting their income. Now, I've seen people get really kind of like uptight and bothered by this. And to me, I don't really get that, because at the end of the day, if you run a business and clients are paying you, that's taxable income, you should be reporting it. So if you are reporting your income like you're supposed to be, then none of that's going to change. Where people get kind of worried about it is when you're using Venmo for family and friends. And in that case, you'll be using a personal Venmo account with personal payments, and that won't really apply.
Interesting. That's good to know.
I don't like Venmo to begin with, though. So
yeah. Don't blame you.
Wedding business growth brought to you.
Yeah, it gets like real messy. This is why. Yeah, I always recommend like using like a CRM, like a Honeybook or Dubsado or any of their various competitors. I think it's a little bit more professional, but I understand the convenience of Venmo, obviously. But yeah,
I love Honeybook.
I think it's when you send someone a nice polished contract and an invoice. Yes, agreed.
So let me ask.
Just real quick, so sorry, Frank. What does Honeybook use for their processing? I know they don't use like a third-party processor as well.
I'm pretty sure they use Stripe. I think all of them do. But I think Honeybook, unlike Dubsado, I think some of it's run directly through their company. I'm not totally sure.
I think it is.
But yeah, it's pretty much all the same. Yeah.
So what about the clients that want to use things like a Venmo or a Cash App just for tip purposes, right? So, I mean, is that something that wedding professionals should avoid accepting as well?
I mean, I don't want to tell you no because I don't want you to ever have to refuse a tip, right? If it was easy to collect that through your CRM, that'd probably be preferable. So I would probably prefer PayPal, like a PayPal business account, I think would be ideal. The thing with Venmo, and I think it's going to get more sophisticated as they roll out more of their business features, but during, I call it 1099 season, the month of January, I had several people who were telling me that even though they used Venmo for business, when they went and looked at their transactions, it had their business transactions classified as like personal payments, which isn't a huge deal. It just means that you have to like untangle some stuff when you do your taxes, and that's not great. But, you know, I would say if you're doing your contracts and your primary invoices with your CRM and taking tips via Venmo, it's probably okay. Just make sure you're reporting it. At the end of the day, using different, like various types of payments, just creating more work for yourself, which is the primary reason I would try to stay away if possible.
Yeah, I think Chris brings up a good point about the fact that I think PayPal owns Venmo. Isn't that correct, guys?
I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think PayPal owns Venmo. I'm not sure. Chris is saying yes.
Nice.
Good to know.
Right?
Sorry, I was actually Googling it. You caught me Googling it right now just because I was interested. I had no idea that they were owned by somebody. They've actually been around since 2009 and were purchased by PayPal in 2012.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just being nosy there.
No, that's okay. You know, we all every show should have somebody that does that. Like, let's Google real quick and find this out.
Yeah, no, I'm the fact checker. So, you know, just kind of had to keep that cruising. Sorry. So yeah, right. People don't when it comes to those, you know, that hobby to side hustle to business, right? People don't know, people don't always realize that they've crossed that line into a business, kind of like we've been talking about. So I guess my question kind of is, at what point do you cross over, right? From just doing it like occasionally as a hobby, you know, is there a bar that people should be looking at and should be keeping up with and saying, okay, at this point, now it's on to something more official where we have to do a little bit more?
Yeah, so for me, like ideally, I'd like to tell everyone as soon as you accept your first payment, like for services, you have a business. I know it's not always that easy though, because it legitimately can start as a hobby and someone's like, oh, well, I would like for you to come and help me. And of course, I'll pay you some money, right? So you say yes. But where I would really want to divide the line is once you actually decide that you have an intent to go find clients. You're like, okay, I actually want to do this. I want to go find clients. So an example I like to give, do you all know Renee Dallo? She's a friend of mine, wedding industry educator. She's a planner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we talked about this on her podcast, but I want to say she did like their first wedding she planned was for a friend. And I think I remembered her saying that her friend like gave her a couch or like bought her a couch, some wild story like that, right? Kind of like a trade for services. And in that case, I'm like, all right, this is like a hobby. But as soon as you're like, oh, well, tell your friends to start hiring me, now you have a business. And the reason for this, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but ultimately, most people are in the negative for at least the first few months of their hobby/business, maybe even for their first year. And if you're not filing your taxes as a business, you actually don't get to report all of those expenses. So oftentimes, by not treating your business like a business, you're not only shorting yourself profit, you're also probably screwing yourself over when it comes to taxes and getting yourself into potential future trouble with the IRS. But you also are not getting to claim all of those expenses, which can offset other income. So lots of good reasons to just do it from the jump as soon as you're ready to invest time, money, and energy.
And you know what? And I think that makes a lot of sense because that's kind of how that's how I chose to approach it. But I also had my father yelling behind me that make everything legal. So, you know, I didn't really have that like moment of uncertainty for what I was doing. He kind of forced me into it. But I think a lot of people do, right? Because this is a very unique industry where, like Nick mentioned earlier, you know, you grew up DJing, and so you just kind of naturally fell into DJing events, private weddings, whatever, right? So we're creatives, we're not all business people, and it's hard to take one hat off and realize you really have to dedicate the time to putting the other hat on and learning those things. So I think that was great advice. Once you're seeking clients, I mean, that couldn't be any clearer. Once you're seeking clients, then at that point you need to make everything official.
Right. Then we need to get a business bank account, super important, do like minimum viable bookkeeping. They're really kind of like simple, obvious stuff are going to make your life so much easier.
Braden, tell us a little bit about the hobby loss rules. I got to be honest, when I was reading the information you sent over to us, that was the first time I'd ever seen that term. So I'm curious to hear more about that.
Okay, sure. So I like to talk about this rule because it's this weird area where it's not something people really need to know about, but I see so much misinformation about it, particularly in business Facebook groups, that I like to kind of dispel all of that misinformation. So the IRS has this rule called the hobby loss rule, which essentially says, it says that you can't report a loss from a hobby on your taxes. And I'll give you a really concrete example. So right now I'm training for my 4th Ironman triathlon. It's super fun, basically like self-torture at this point, lots and lots of exercise. But I always like to, like this, under this example, if a friend came to me and they said, hey, Braden, I'd really like to train for my first triathlon, regardless of the distance. Can you like coach me or help me or give me tips? And I say, sure. I'll send you like a training plan every Monday. And in exchange, they're like, all right, awesome. I'll PayPal you $200, like take you out for dinner, whatever. I might say, if I wanted to be super creative, I might say, okay, I'm a triathlon coach now. So my triathlon that I'm going to in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm going to write off that flight. I'm going to write off my hotel, and I'm going to buy a new bike because that's important for me as a coach, because I'm going to be like marketing while I'm there, and I might get like a custom jersey made. But at the end of the year, I'm reporting $200 in income and like 10 grand in expenses. And I don't actually have an intent to try to make any profit, right? The IRS does not want us doing that. So they have this general rule that if you are unprofitable for more than a couple years in a row, they're going to assume that you're operating a hobby and not a business. And you can overcome that assumption by showing actual motive to make profit. Now, this kind of freaks people out when I talk about it, because they're like, oh, well, shit, I'm still trying to become profitable. Large companies, like if you ever listen to the How I Built This podcast or you get into startups, these companies are running in a negative for like a decade sometimes before they make a profit, but they're investing in order to do so. So that can be pretty obvious when you're putting forth the effort. So that's what we have these rules designed to do. If you're actually trying to start a business and trying to find clients, take all your expenses, write them off on your taxes. You probably don't need to worry about it.
It's good to know.
I had no idea that was a thing.
Me either.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you all can imagine that like person who goes out there and spends like, I don't even know. You tell me like 20 grand in video equipment, like really just for fun, but they have like one person who pays them like $50, and now they're going to say they have a business and write all that off on their taxes. You can't do that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because I think that's a lot of that's such a perfect example. A lot of times you'll see newer people. There's a couple of people that I've been working with through the Wed Pros kind of mentorship program that they have, and that was one of the. I think it's funny that you say that, because it was one of the first things I said is, look, don't go out and spend a ton of money on equipment. Like, get what you need to get the job done. And then all of those like really high-end cool things you really like to have. I like to say, spend out of profit, not out of pocket. Like, let's get you making some money with the least amount of investment first off the bat, just in case this thing doesn't go well. And then when it starts going well for yourself, then go ahead and think about buying that higher, next level equipment, or, those types of things.
Yeah, I actually talked about this a lot on one of my own podcast episodes. It took me about a year before I bought this damn microphone. Reason being because I talk a lot about profit. I mean, my program's called Profit RX. And one of the things I teach in my program is that if you want to buy something in your business, unless you know you're going to get like an immediate ROI on it, and if you want to buy something in your business, you should be able to buy it and still have the profit, like your target profit margin that month. So if my target profit margin is 70%, I should be able to spend $700 on this microphone setup, pay all of my other expenses, and still have my 70% margin that month. And if I can't do that, then in my mind, I can't afford that business expense. Now, something like ads or hiring a contractor that it's immediately going to be able to take over an event for you, where you'll see that spend like double itself in the next month, that's a little bit different, but that's how we should start thinking about these types of business expenses.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. I could not agree with that more. So talking a little bit again, maybe going back to the legal side of things, you know, I think you've kind of we've kind of established that you legally have a business when you're starting to get paid to provide a service and or product. I think at this point, I think we've kind of established that. But from tax considerations and things like that, how is that viewed differently based on where you are in that process?
Yeah, well, from a tax, so it's actually more clear cut from a tax perspective, because as soon as it really all comes down to intent. So at the IRS, they'll say as soon as you intend to be, again, getting clients, trying to make money, you have a business, you should be filing your business taxes, which means self-employment tax on top of income tax. So that's all super fun, right? From the legal perspective, there's no really like, unlike the IRS, there's no like one body. We have kind of a different threshold for like when you would have to have a business license. You don't ever like have to have an LLC, but like when that would be a good idea. And those are kind of all vary. But for the most part, you know, as soon as you think like, oh, okay, I wanna do this and invest some time, we're gonna do all of those things. But definitely we want to make sure that we are doing our IRS shit like from the beginning.
Yeah,
I tell you, I think those letters just scare people, no matter what. Even if it's just, you know, regular, like I'm working a day job like I do, and just if that was my only source of income and I was single, I didn't have the kids or the wife or anything like that. Even just filing like that single person return, like you hear IRS, it's just scary itself. You know, so when you start adding businesses and other variables on it, it's like it's just even more of a reason to like cross your T's and dot your I's.
Yeah. I like to tell people just expect to get like at least one piece of mail from the IRS every year, and it makes it a lot less scary. Like we get so much mail from the IRS. Like my husband and I feel like we get so much mail from the IRS, and a lot of the times it's mail like you've updated your PIN number with the IRS, like whatever that means, or we've confirmed your change of address. Like it's not always super scary. If you do get mail from them saying that you owe them money, the last thing you want to do is avoid opening it for months on end, right? A lot of the times you probably don't owe them money because they make mistakes, or maybe you do, but you can pay it off in installments. But the last thing you want to do is procrastinate when it comes to mail from the IRS, hate mail from the IRS.
That's funny. Hate mail from the IRS.
I think I told this on a previous podcast before too, but I remember that my business got audited one time, and it was in the beginning, it was a very, you know, to me, very intimidating, very scary process. But, you know, basically, you know, like a lot of us, I was running my business out of my home. So like this guy from the IRS comes to my house. I got all this stuff laid out on like the dining room table, and he's just going through it, and I'm sitting there sweating bullets probably. And, you know, hey, would you like a water? Hey, would you like a beer? Hey, you know, I'd probably didn't offer him a beer, but, you know, I'm like, whatever I could kind of offer him to make him feel good in that home. And so he's going through the whole process, and, you know, he says, oh, well, we have an issue here. And he shows me all these numbers, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, like at that time, my father was helping me with a lot of my, you know, business stuff, a lot of my money stuff, tax stuff. He you know, he doesn't have he's not a CPA or anything at all like that, but just very sharp person, very good with numbers. Much like Braden, my dad was like, every dollar you make, whether it's a tip or a payment or anything, make sure you report it, the whole 9 yards. And so he was very rigid about that stuff. So I'm sitting there when the IRS guy says, hey, we've got a problem. I'm like, there's no damn way. I said, I think y'all have a problem. I don't think we have a problem. So he literally gives me his stuff that he went through. And so I'm going through his numbers with my numbers side by side, like line by line by line by line by line. This probably took me, I'm not even kidding you guys, probably took me about 12 hours of just going through line by line by line by line. And I finally came to a line where he had transposed the numbers. So it was like, 275 on mine, but he had like 572 on his or something along those lines. So the numbers were transposed, and that was the only difference in the entire thing. And I just remember kind of like that excitement of saying, hey, guess what? You made the mistake, not me. It was pretty funny, but you probably don't always have that chance.
Now, how long ago was that?
This is probably, it had to be at least 10 years ago, probably. At least 10 or 12, maybe longer, but probably about 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, and in present day, like the likelihood of that happening is so slim because the IRS is so underfunded, so underfunded. Unless they think that you owe them like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, like they're probably not going to waste their time with a house visit unless you're like the least lucky person out there. But yeah, that's awesome that you got that. They're not, their caseload is like obscene. So I would imagine that they make their fair share of mistakes.
Yeah, I actually kind of felt like I was a guy that like all of my buddies like secretly submitted to the IRS. Like, you should really check this guy's business out. Like, they just flooded the IRS with that, and it was just a dirty joke on me because I'm like, how in the world would I have gotten picked for this to happen to?
Yeah. Yeah, luckily now now they do a lot more like mail audits if you get audited. So it's just like correspondence via like, mail, or the home visits aren't quite as common, luckily.
Yeah. Hey, but Nick, Frank, you guys have never been audited, I'm assuming. No?
Oh, no, no.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Well, hopefully it never happens to you.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I hopefully pay really good money for an accountant who's never going to allow me to get audited. And if I do, he should handle it. So that's my hope. We'll see how it goes, though. So I mean, we're talking taxes, right? And everybody, like, what's the big thing when it comes to talking taxes, especially with businesses? It's like how to save, right? What can I do to get a little bit more out of my money? And when it comes to those, taxes, there are definitely some ways that you can go about saving some money. So can you talk to us a little bit about some tips or tricks that business owners can use to help them save money through their taxes?
Sure. So the first thing I'm going to tell people is I just had someone ask me the other day, hey, Braden, my goal is to pay $0 in taxes. Can you help me? I was like, well, my advice for you would be to make no money. If you don't want to pay any taxes, like, don't make any money, make no profit, spend all of your money on bullshit that you don't need to be able to write off all of your income. So that's like not the kind of advice you're going to get from me. If you're running a profitable business, you're going to pay taxes, just the way it is, right? But there are certain things, like things in the tax law that were written for us to take advantage of, right? Pretty much every tax benefit we have was written into law by Congress, oftentimes to benefit themselves, but we also get to take those benefits as well, or to incentivize us to take certain actions, right? So I have like 5 kind of top level tips. So I'll kind of highlight them overall, and then we can, dive deeper into the ones you think will be most interesting. So the first is to maximize business deductions. The second is to maximize like personal deductions or adjustments, we can call them. The third is to make sure you're paying your quarterly taxes so that we don't end up with any penalties. Number 4 is to carefully consider forming an S corporation for your business. Timing for that is everything, so we can dig into that. And then really learning about some tax credits as well. We could probably lump that into personal deductions and benefits. So those are some good like overview categories.
Yeah, I think the maybe touching a little bit on the differences between business and personal. Especially if you have already established a corporation, because then you start looking at this, and I think this is still prevalent. I think they kind of call it piercing the corporate veil, or kind of breaking the corporate seal of when you think something as a business, but it's a business deduction, but it's really not, or a business expense, but it's really not, more of a personal thing. So maybe just a little bit on that would probably be super helpful, I would think.
Yeah, so first thing, piercing the corporate veil, not something a lot of people are super familiar with. It's a term that we hear. This is actually a legal term, and that has a lot to do with how we run our companies. So once you form an LLC or a corporation, your business becomes separate from yourself. So I wrote a book called Unfuck Your Biz. Everyone can check it out if they are really interested in reading about taxes. It's super fun for everyone. I talk about how forming an LLC is kind of like the process of mitosis and meiosis. I never remember which one's which. It doesn't matter. But we all know that like cells can split apart, right? So they stay as one, they split apart. That's what happens when you form an LLC. Your business is you at first, and then it splits off and becomes its own thing. And once it does that, you have to manage your business like any other CEO would have to manage their company. You can't commingle your funds. You can't just like do whatever you want. And if you are managing the business like it's still part of yourself and you're not doing that, then people can try to pierce the corporate veil when they sue you, which is effectively saying that the LLC or the corporation should be treated as if it doesn't exist. So that's really important, and that does tie into our taxes from the perspective of if you're commingling your funds once you have a type of business like this and you're paying for all your personal shit out of your business bank account, then people can try to pierce the corporate veil. So we don't want to do that, okay? When it comes to business deductions versus personal deductions, sometimes I have a hard time talking about this because to me, it's fairly intuitive. Like, am I buying this for my business or am I buying this for my personal use, right? I know in some circumstances it's not as clear, but let me give you some examples. So the general rule is that you can deduct something for your business if it's ordinary and necessary. Ordinary means it's like common in your line of work, and necessary means it's helpful and appropriate for your business. So microphone, if you have a podcast, very ordinary, very necessary, you get the picture. Other things like your cell phone, definitely you're going to use in business, but you also are going to use this for personal use. So this is what I call a mixed use expense. Technically speaking, anything that's mixed use, so usually your phone, your internet, your car, you want to pay out of your personal bank account, and you can still take a partial business deduction for it. When you have an SCorp, your SCorp should actually reimburse you underneath of what we call an accountable plan. This is getting very technical and specific, but these are some of the things that we want to think about when it comes to business deductions, broadly speaking.
Yeah. What about haircuts?
You gotta look right.
Haircuts are a no.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to hear you say it.
And here's the other thing I'll tell your audience. I know. The thing I'll tell your audience is what my tax professor always told me in law school was that oftentimes she would advise her clients to take deductions based on how risk averse they were. So like if David's like, I got audited once, it was a great time because I went through all those lines, I had my coffee. At the end of the day, like I got the IRS, I won, I'll do it again and take all the deductions under the sun. That's your perspective. You know, you're probably going to feel comfortable writing off a lot more than someone who's terrified of ever having to deal with a tax man, right? So different kind of scenario. And when you're interviewing tax professionals to work for you, you want your level of risk to kind of align with theirs. I'm pretty much the only area in my life in which I am conservative is when it comes to taxes. So that's not really going to be me. But other tax professionals, they'll do whatever you want. They'll get real creative for you. But typically like haircuts, clothing, haircuts in particular, usually that's only going to be like for models, really. Clothing wise, you can only really deduct clothing when it's clothing that is not appropriate for everyday use. And so that would be branded apparel. So like you're wearing a branded t-shirt, that would really be a marketing expense most likely. But if you have a uniform, that's typically deductible. I actually, is a very weird side note, but very briefly, I thought about trying to pursue a niche representing drag queens because I'm obsessed with RuPaul's Drag Race. And to my knowledge, there are no tax or legal pros that are really niched in that. And for them, I would argue that a lot of their stuff would be deductible, a lot of their clothing, because it's just for shows. They're not like walking down the street in these like elaborate sequin costumes.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably one of the top misnomers, if you will, within our industry is that the first thing that comes to mind is like haircuts or suits or just things that really walk that line. And I think I'm much like you, Braden. I would rather be on the conservative side of that line than the aggressive side of that line myself.
Yeah. With the clothing in particular, the rule really is it appropriate for personal use? Translation, like, could you wear this in your personal life? Not like, are you going to? But I had a client once who was an influencer, and she wanted to write off all of her Louis Vuitton bags because I told her no. I said, if they're in your closet, you can use them on a day-to-day basis. You can't write those off. But she also did giveaways where she would actually give away Louis Vuitton merchandise to people who won giveaway contests. That would be deductible. Different circumstance, different purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense. So paying quarterly taxes. Frank, did you want to comment on something like that before we jumped into this?
No, actually, I was just going to segue into it but yeah, you go ahead. You got it.
Okay. No, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just going to say paying quarterly taxes is always an interest. I think I hate to say this, but I don't know. But I think we actually pay our business. We pay them monthly. But you mentioned about paying them, how they can help you save money. Can you explain a little bit more into that? And just for personal reasons, from a monthly standpoint versus a quarterly standpoint, am I really doing anything one way or the other?
Yeah, it's gonna depend on your business structure, first of all. So if you have an SCorp and you're on payroll, most of your taxes are going to be paid through your payroll. So quarterly taxes are going to be less of a concern for you. If you're a single member LLC or a sole proprietor, then you're not paying payroll. So you're going to pay quarterly taxes ideally. Now, the kind of there are lots of caveats I can give to this, but one of them is that penalties for failure to pay quarterly taxes are pretty low. It usually ends up being about 4% of the tax owed at year end. So not super high. A lot of people pay them and don't even realize it. Other caveat is that you only really need to pay quarterly taxes once you're operating at a profit, because you don't have a profit, you're not going to owe tax because you have a loss, right? So once you're operating at a profit, the goal is to figure out what percentage of your income needs to go towards taxes. You're going to save it on a recurring basis. And then once per quarter, you're going to pay that. That's if you have a sole prop or a single member LLC or like a partnership that's not taxed as an S-Corp. If you have an S-Corp or you're on payroll, then you only really need to worry about quarterly taxes on whatever your profit distributions are, which is a little bit more of an advanced concept. But just some things to kind of start to wrap your mind around, because we have to consider different things based on really where we are in our business, revenue-wise, typically.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned S-Corp a couple of times, and earlier, a little bit ago when we kind of segued into this, you talked about like doing it at the right time, right? So how can a business owner identify when is the right time to make that move from either like a sole proprietorship or a single member LLC into an S-Corp?
So it's mostly profit based. So typically you're not going to want to have an S-Corp until you have profit, the profit being the keyword, not revenue, but profit of at least like bare minimum 60,000, but typically we're looking at like 70, 80,000. And we can explain this in great detail if you would like, but I'll kind of let you decide how into the weeds we want to get with S-Corps.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just enough high level, right? So that way somebody could at least know that they've hit that trigger point. And then I'm sure at that point, they really just need to go talk to some, some professionals to kind of help them the rest of the way at that point. But yeah, what's that line, and then what's those first couple of steps or those first couple of professionals that they need to reach out to get the process rolling with that transition?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is if they want to learn more or talk to a professional, they can join my membership. It's $30 a month. It's fantastic. It'll give them all the information they need. We actually have an SCorp savings calculator in there. It's a spreadsheet I created. You punch in your numbers. It tells you how much you should save. But to broadly discuss how an SCorp works, once you form an SCorp, you put yourself on salary. So you are going to get a payroll paycheck just like if you were an employee of any other company. That salary must be what the IRS calls a quote unquote reasonable minimum salary. Reason for that is the lower your salary is, the more you're going to save on taxes. And here's how that works. You pay income tax and self-employment tax on your salary. So effectively 2 different taxes. And then on any additional profit you have in the business, you're only going to pay income tax, not self-employment taxes. So an S-Corp helps save you some, not all, but some self-employment taxes once you're profitable enough to put yourself on payroll and have some additional profit left over.
I mean, I think that's a pretty good like line in the sand, right? To know when it's that time to make that jump from, you know, what you've been doing up to that point into something that's going to potentially save you some of those profits, is what it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes our threshold is you want to have $20,000 in profit above and beyond what your reasonable salary would be. And your reasonable salary can vary from 40,000 to 60 or 80,000, which is why we then say like 60 to 80,000 is the profit you would want to be at. So that can kind of help you figure out, okay, when is the time at which I need to take the time to learn more about how this really works?
I just love the fact that you had just defined the fact a reasonable salary should be, you know, 40,000 and up, because I think there's so many people who get into our industry that don't grasp that. You know, just because your business is bringing in 40,000, just because your business maybe is even bringing in 100,000, you know, that doesn't mean that you have a salary of that. That just means that's what your business brings in. And I think so many people, that's where they get hung up, because they don't understand why they're not able to build and continue to stay profitable. And it's because you're not necessarily business planning or budgeting your business in a proper manner to even put yourself in that position in the first place.
Yeah, and I like ideally for these figures, like what I like to see for a lot of service-based businesses is that if you have a 6-figure business, 100,000, I would like to see most people operate at 70% profit. So it's $30,000 in business expenses. Your reasonable salary would probably be 40 or 50,000, which would leave what, 20 or 30,000 for your profit. Now, I talk a lot about on my platforms why I think $200,000 should be the threshold for most business owners. Reason being that in the modern economy, I think most people need above, like at or above 6 figures in take-home pay just to like afford a really comfortable lifestyle. Like at the point where, you know, got to pay off student loans, save for retirement, have a mortgage if you want to do all that boring grown-up stuff. 100,000 in revenue probably isn't going to cut it anymore, unfortunately.
So we got a question real quick here from Dan watching. Dan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So what's the difference between an S Corp and a C Corp, Dan asks?
So great question, Dan. First big difference is an S Corp's not actually a type of legal entity. It's a tax status. So this is something I always like to get out of the way. You can form an LLC or a C Corp, and then you elect to be taxed as an S Corp. You can elect to be taxed as a pass-through like an LLC, as an S Corp, or as a C Corp. C Corps actually file and pay business level taxes. So when Trump was in office, he lowered the corporate tax rate to 21%. The way this works is if you have a business and your business profits $70,000 and is structured as a C Corp, your business is going to pay a 21% tax on that income. And then you as an officer of the business is going to take a salary, and then you're going to pay taxes on your distributions as well. So this is why we say C Corps are subject to double taxation. So C Corps, long story short, not great for small businesses. Typically, you only really want to have a C Corp if you have a lot of employees, because there's more benefits and deductions for that kind of thing. Or if you have a lot of what we call retained earnings. So that would be money in the bank that you do not plan on paying yourself. Because in an S Corp, you would pay tax on that money, and a C Corp, you would not. But for most of us, we don't really have any reason to keep money in our business bank account. Like if you have profit, pay yourself, get it into savings, pay down debt, save for retirement, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't really worry about a C Corp unless you have until you have a multi-million-dollar business and want to make some advanced tax decisions.
That makes sense. Dan says interesting.
Yeah.
Dan is the homie.
Yes. Yeah. I have yet to. Yeah, in the 4 years doing this work, I've yet to form a C Corp for any clients. There really hasn't been a need for it. So I do know I have like a friend, a colleague who has like a $20 million a year business, and she does have a C Corp because at this point she has like 30 employees who all have benefits and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Nick, you got anything for us, man? You want to bring it home with us?
Yeah. So we're talking about, how about poor record keeping? That's something that I've struggled with. Let's talk about it. And
Sure.
Maybe overspending as well. You know, like you see, I think if for new business owners, you see all this money coming in and you don't really recognize, like I know you talked about like, oh, $100,000 a year, you take away this amount of money here and you have, your $40,000, $50,000 profit, but maybe talk about like the record keeping and how to not overspend in business.
Yeah, the overspending is a big one. Actually, I did a presentation, like a talk last week for a group of business owners that I called Tax Fact or Fiction. And I played a TikTok video, like a tax advice TikTok video. And then I asked everyone if it was a tax fact or a tax fiction. And then I gave the actual rules, right? So we have all these like bro marketers, podcasters on there talking about like, do net jets, like rent your private jet, like go get your G-Wagon, like all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Sure, if you have a fuck ton of money, like go do that. But for most of us, like it doesn't make sense to have a $150,000 Mercedes, even if we could theoretically afford it, because that's eating away all of our profit, right? I see this all the time. It happens every December. People will say, oh, I got to get in like my spending so I can get my tax deductions. They have like $5,000 saved for taxes, and they then spend $5,000 on who knows what in their business. And that $5,000 that they spend is going to save them about $1,000 in taxes. So now they owe $4,000. But their bank account's got $0 in it. People don't think about this when they spend money. So we really want our spending habits to be dictated by the profit in our business. So I like to build a slush fund in my business with extra profit I have. I put it in a little bit of a business savings to put towards goals that I have. When it comes to record keeping, the biggest thing you need to do when you're early on in business is open a business bank account. I'm an affiliate for Novo. It's like a free online banking bank account. If anyone needs a recommendation, check it out. So get a business bank account, put all of your business income in there, spend all your pay for all your business purchases out of that account. And then when it comes to record keeping, for newer business owners, I'm a big fan of just using a simple spreadsheet, because oftentimes when people try to get into QuickBooks, they just fuck it up because they don't know what they're doing. They don't take the time to learn how to use it. So just use a spreadsheet until that becomes, until there's too many line items. And then you can hire someone or determine if you really want to take the time to learn how to use a more sophisticated system.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was going to say QuickBooks is an absolute cluster for someone who's just getting started, because I can say firsthand, I tried it. I was like, all right, we're not doing this.
Yeah, and it's like, especially for service-based businesses, like a spreadsheet will get you very far.
Yeah.
Like I have students who use a spreadsheet until they get to about $200,000 in revenue, and then they're like, all right, I'll hire a bookkeeper. For myself, I have a $30 a month membership, and I sell. I started offering something I call the Contract Vault in January for $30. We've had 348 sales as of this morning. So with a spreadsheet, I have to manually enter all of those. For my business model, it's a little bit less ideal. But when you're taking, when you have, I don't know, 20 to 50 clients a year paying you $2,000 to $5,000, it's a lot more manageable.
For sure.
Yeah. And speaking of your, sorry, go ahead, Frank, and I'll wrap up with this. Go ahead.
No, you're fine either way. I was actually lucky. I found a CPA who set my QuickBooks up for me, right? And then literally like took time to show me how to use it. And I think if it was, hey Frank, sign up for QuickBooks and set this stuff up on yourself, right? Like that would have been a train wreck. But because it was all organized and he showed me how to make those entries and he showed me what to do in certain spots, and then he also, because of course he's my CPA also, so he left there like a category he created, which was like an Ask My Accountant category, right? So anytime that I don't really know where to put it or I don't know how to consider it what it is, then I just stick it there. And at the end of the year or periodically throughout the year, he checks it and sends me a couple of questions maybe. But I mean, it's really nice when you kind of have that pre-built based on the last couple of years of taxes, which is kind of what he did. He built it into QuickBooks to know what he needed to put there. And then now moving forward, it makes sense.
Nice. Yeah, we love an Ask My Accountant category. If everyone can find an accountant like that, that's fantastic. Otherwise, be careful with QuickBooks on your own, because a lot of accountants, tax preparers will charge you more for a QuickBooks cleanup than they would just to like do your books all year, because it takes them longer to fix it all. So, be careful with the QuickBooks.
Oh, absolutely. So I think you kind of addressed this one, but just to kind of put a button on this, as far as suggesting people spend their money at the end of the year, I think basically you said it's not necessarily going to really benefit you that much overall. Is there any time where it would be advantageous to do it versus not doing it?
Yeah, so a few things to consider. First of all, if December is approaching and you want to know what you should be doing to close out the tax year strong, first look at how much money you've made. If you can, do an estimate on how much tax you're going to owe. If you have an accountant, they can help you with that. And first and foremost, figure out if you have enough money saved for taxes. If you don't have enough money saved for taxes, don't spend anything. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is to consider your profitability this year versus next year. So if you're pretty new in business and you didn't make a whole lot of money this year, especially if you don't have a full-time job or a lot of other sources of income, it means you're going to be on a low tax bracket. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend a lot of money right now. If you're expecting to double your income next year, you're going to be in a higher tax bracket. Every dollar you spend will benefit you even more because you'll be paying a higher percentage in the next year. So contrary to what a lot of people believe, if you're in a growth trajectory in your business, it might make the most sense to wait until January to make purchases in your business. Now, the third thing to consider is if you have extra money saved and you want to get some tax benefit, typically the best thing you can do is to really get your retirement account rolling, because that could potentially be tax deductible depending on what type of account you have. And no matter what, you're not wasting your money when you put it into retirement savings, because you're going to gain interest on it. You'll get it back later. You're not spending money on some technology that's going to be, outdated, God knows when.
Love it. Well, I know you talked a little bit about your program, Profit RX. And so I think to wrap things up, can you just share a little bit more about that? And, I'll pop up your website here so people can take a look as well.
Sure. So first of all, like I mentioned, I have a new program called the Contract Vault. If you want to get access to that, it's $30. And I have probably 20 or more contract templates in there at this point in time. It sounds like it's too good to be true. But really, this is, I think, a lesson to everyone on economy of scale. It's so easy to sell, but it makes me, this is like doing pretty good, right? So check it out. I think you're going to love it. But ProfitRx is my monthly membership, and members also get access to the contract vault. So if you want help with your taxes, your bookkeeping, cash flow management is something that I talk about and teach about a lot. I help people form LLCs and S-Corps. ProfitRx includes like 8 different courses along with all of my resources. So they can check that out. And the $30 a month is actually a new price point I just put out this month. It's kind of a new offer, and that will only really be around through the end of March. So you can check it out. If anyone has questions about it, they can DM me on Instagram. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And my Instagram is at Braden, middle name Adam, like the biblical figure. My last name is Drake, like the rapper. That's how you find me.
Love that.
Love it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being on with us today, Braden. I've learned a lot from this conversation, and I'm sure everybody watching and who will listen to the replay have learned a lot as well. For those of you that maybe do hear the replay and don't see us live, you can find out more about Braden's program at bradendrake.com, BradenDrake.com. Definitely go check that out. And if nothing else, it's a really, really great put together website. A lot of thought and a lot of humor went into this website. So if you don't look at it for any other reason, definitely go take a look at that, and it might give you some inspiration for how your website should be. I love the photo on the part that says less boring stuff, and I'll just let y'all find that Easter egg for the day.
Enjoy.
Braden, you know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm sure. But thank you so much again for joining us tonight.
I do.
We really appreciate it. And we'd love to have you back sometime. And I know you have so much, knowledge and information to share. So hopefully we can have you back again sometime.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Nick, Frank, anything before we wrap up, fellas?
No, I really enjoyed it, and I was checking out the website actually before you even said anything, and I saw like the Magic 8-Ball picture, looked pretty cool, and threw me back to like wanting to go grab one and like ask some questions, like, will my wife be nice to me tonight or not?
Nick, any final thoughts, man?
Braden, thanks for being on again. So much information, so good, and I really appreciate you being on. Great stuff.
All right. Well, I think that'll bring us to the end of the night. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let's see. Do we have a show next week? I don't even know if we have a show next week. Stay tuned for text messages. We'll let you know if we have a show next week.
Bye.
I'm not sure if we do or not. Until next time, though, thank you very much for joining us. Chris Dis, thank you, man. Always appreciate the love, man, and support from you and everybody else on board with us. So until we see you all next time, Braden, if you'll hang out with us for just a second behind the scenes, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up the live portion right now. Thank you all again. Have a great rest of your week, and reach out to us if you have any questions. We will get those answered. If we can't answer them ourselves, we'll find somebody that can. Have a great week. Thank you all.